And welcome to the Huddle, KGUN 9's weekly streaming sports talk show. I'm Jason Barr of KGUN 9, joined by Pat Parris. Pat, good afternoon. We just got done with our promo shoot because we are headed to San Antonio with the Arizona Wildcats. They're going to play in the Alamo Bowl against Oklahoma.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Jason. The 28th, 7:15 Tucson time on that night, kind of in between the Christmas and New Year's holidays. And, I would expect that the Wildcats will have a lot of fans going over. And you and I will go over with our chief photographer, John Parra, and cover the festivities. It should be good. Back in a bowl game, it's been a little while.
This is the third straight trip to San Antonio for U of A athletics in 3 years. That is, women's team going to the Final Four, the championship game in 21. Last year, the Sweet 16 was in San Antonio, and this year maybe a better outcome as they go to the Alamo Bowl and we'll play Oklahoma, and an Oklahoma team, Pat, that is not going to have its starting quarterback because Dylan Gabriel, their starter, entered the transfer portal. Gabriel announced today. So Monday, he says he's going to the transfer portal. Tuesday, he says he's going to Oregon. We got some video of Dylan Gabriel. And this is a guy who had 30 touchdown passes, just 6 interceptions, 3,600 something yards.
Yep.
I think he ran for 12 other touchdowns. Left-handed quarterback. This is a big loss. I think it moved the line a little bit too. I think Arizona was maybe a 1 or 1.5 point favorite. Went up to 3.5 points. I mean, you want to win the game. You also want to play against Oklahoma's best players, but at the same time, everybody's going to have guys who are going to be injured or hit the transfer portal. You got to play. You're going to play.
Yeah, and this is one, though, that's kind of a head-scratcher because Oklahoma, ranked 12th in the country, the third most prolific offense in America, and he's going to transfer, and he's a reason why that they're number 3, averaging 43.2 points per game, Jason. So you wonder what's going on there, and maybe not content with the future of the Sooner program and going into the SEC.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't be content that way. Who knows? We don't know all the, what's going on.
Sure.
We're not in Norman, so we don't know. But
Money.
man, you wonder why. And if you're a Wildcat fan, yeah, you want to play their best. But at the same time, thank you very much. Now you don't have to worry about the quarterback who led them to the third best offense through 12 games in the NCAA. So we'll see if that means that they won't be as potent, and maybe Arizona's offense, which is slightly better than Oklahoma's offense, will have the advantage now because it'll be a quarterback that isn't as used to running their system.
Today, Arizona head coach Jedd Fisch named one of 12 finalists for the Eddie Robinson Award that goes to the nation's top coach.
Could this season, or you could choose it as a championship game. Those are the two options, and we're going to choose it as a championship game.
Okay, so that was Arizona head coach Jedd Fisch. The soundbite ran a little early there, but basically he was talking about how he approaches a bowl game. Fisch actually was a head coach for the Cactus Bowl in 2017. That was the year he was at UCLA as a coordinator. Josh Rosen was the quarterback. Jim Mora, the head coach, was let go, and so he was the head coach for that game. It was a game that they lost. Much different scenario here, of course. He's been the head coach for a coaching staff that's staying and a team that's on the rise here with a 9-3 record. But Pat, I like the approach. I think that's the way to go. I mean, mentally, if you're thinking about a celebration of the season, celebrating and winning a game does not go hand in hand. You want to celebrate after you win the game. So I kind of like the mental approach, and he's Mr. Positivity, and also I think this is the way to go.
He's also very good at, and we've seen it, Jason. He's very good at really making sure that his guys are focused on the next task at hand, and not getting wrapped up like fans do necessarily in the overall picture. Yes, they can be proud of a 9-3 record and a pretty good bowl game in the Alamo Bowl. But his focus is now let's win a championship, and a championship meaning the Alamo Bowl. And I think Michael Lev wrote in the paper today about, this is what Washington did last year as a springboard of the success they have this year. They
both Alamo Bowl teams last year in the college football playoff. Jedd
Right.
mentioned that. He's like, wouldn't that be nice for next
year?
Yeah.
Part of that can be, traced back to the fact that the Alamo Bowl is number 2, basically number 2 Big 12 team and number 2 Pac-12 team in essence. And that's what Arizona is, because Washington goes to the playoff.
Right.
Oregon goes to a big bowl, and Arizona would be considered the number 2 team in the Pac-12. Ironically, though, both Oklahoma, they're leaving to go to the SEC, and Arizona's leaving, as many of the schools are out of the Pac-12, but they're going to the Big 12. So, we'll see what the bowl alliance is with the Alamo next year. But the point is, you could use this as a springboard to win a championship at the Alamo Bowl and move forward to winning potentially a championship in the Big 12, which, I think we all are really excited about how Arizona will be able to stack up in the Big 12 next year, looking at the football teams and the football schools, and you think, okay, they can compete.
Yeah, especially when Jed Fish makes the comment that he thinks they're going to be even better next year than they are this year. Wow, that I thought that was a heck of a comment he made. I think it was the day after possibly the Territorial Cup game. Interesting comment, because they do lose a couple of starters on the defensive line who have been so good this year, but certainly a lot of returning players as well. Yeah, so wouldn't that be amazing for Arizona to get a 10-win season? Something they haven't done since 2014, something that hasn't been done many times, in this program. And not just a 10-win season, but, in 2014, when they finished 10-4, they lost their final 2 games of the year, and didn't look good in either, to be frank, and this would be a 10-win season with a 7-game winning streak at the end of the season, right? A little different, and by gosh, Pat, here we are talking about a winning streak.
Yes.
A winning streak. After this,
not the losing streak that we were talking about.
After this team lost 20 in a row from a stretch of 2019 into the 2021 season, a 20-game losing streak over 3 seasons with the COVID shortened season, we'd be talking about a 7-game winning streak going into next year. I love how Fish says, 9-3 this year, but also 11-4 the last 15 games. He always finds like a statistic to make it better,
Right.
And so I think that's pretty good. So looks like we got some comments.
Yeah,
here.
Wally Wildcat has a good point, and I think he's right. He's talking about how Jed Fish talks like a coach planning to stick around at least. And I think, you and I talked about it last week. We feel like, he's going to stick around for now, and that's great. And it does sound like that he's got the plans for next year. Who knows what the future beyond that brings, but I think we're both pretty resting comfortably that Jed Fish will be the coach next year. And the way he talks, he thinks the team's going to be better. Don't forget, they got to replace a couple of really talented offensive linemen as well. And that's good. You're talking about guys that are going to go early in the draft, and that'll be tough to replace. But he must have real confidence in what they've got coming in, or maybe he's got some insight to perhaps a player or two who could end up transferring or whatever. But he's excited. So are we.
Yeah, and we talked about Dylan Gabriel not playing for Oklahoma. Obviously, he's already left the program, I'm sure. Not a situation like that with Jordan Morgan, but I'd be surprised if he played, the starting left tackle who, doesn't need to risk another injury ahead of the NFL draft after what happened last year. So guys, aren't going to play in this game from both. So that's something also to think about when I mentioned Dylan Gabriel either.
Sure.
So, but that's somebody who they're going to have to replace for next year, and somebody who will get a look at maybe in this game as well for the Wildcats.
Yeah, that's it. You got opportunities for guys. And, I think this game, we'll have much more time to talk about this, Jason, even than the week, the few days leading up to it. I'm sure we'll do a show the week between Christmas and New Year's as we head over there. But this is a team that has been surprisingly very good and consistent defensively in the Arizona Wildcats. They'll be put to the test again, but we've seen them put to the test, and they've done fairly well. They slowed down Washington when they had to. Unfortunately, USC, they couldn't slow down. They needed one more stop, and they just couldn't get it. But overall, they've done a very good job. You think what they did against Washington State and Oregon State, and you go down the line. I think this defense is pretty much the surprise of the team, and maybe the surprise of the Pac-12 as far as coming from nowhere and becoming pretty impressive.
Before we get to college basketball, did you have a thought on the Florida State being?
I think it's awful.
All right, so we agree.
Yeah. We don't need to go into it, but I really think that it's a shame, and I think It really tells you where we are in the state of college football. And I go back to Jason, when they decided that they were going to expand to 12 teams, it was back late in the summer, if my memory serves correctly. And everybody said, well, you're going to do it this year, going to do it this year. This could be the year where you have a lot of teams all vie, because they knew the Pac-12 was finally going to have a couple of good teams. And you knew that this scenario could play out. No, we're going to wait until 2024. And it's like, why didn't you just do this? I know it would have meant really kind of twisting some arms with the major bowls, but they could have gotten this done, and then we wouldn't even have been in this position. That's what frustrated me.
If you were an AP voter and Florida State takes care of business in its bowl game, and Michigan or Washington, the two undefeated teams, don't win the national championship, would you vote Florida State number one in the country at the end of the season?
Probably not, but I would vote them number two.
Well, why not vote them number one?
Because you're talking about a scenario where either Alabama or Texas is going to win a national championship, and
right.
That means that they had to beat the other two undefeated teams. And then you could make the case for, if this team's now 14, what would they be, 13-1 versus Florida, who's now just 13-0 and didn't have to beat the number one and or number two teams in the country, because likely they're going to beat the number one and number two team in the country if you're Texas or Alabama. Mm-hmm. That's impressive. I mean, that trumps what Florida State did. Now, it's not through any fault of their own. Florida State should have been in there, and they're not. But because they're not, they can't be ranked. No, they can't be number one because they didn't go through that final four.
The best case for the committee getting it correct was Michigan's reaction to playing Alabama. Did you see their reaction? It was like groans, like they thought they were going to play Florida State. I mean, that there's something there, but it shouldn't be the eye test. It's not as
it's
others
not figure
said,
skating,
it's
right?
Not figure skating,
yep.
And it should be by strength of record, not strength of schedule. And Florida State did nothing wrong.
Nope.
And with that defense, and don't give me this nonsense. Their quarterback's not playing. Ohio State won with a national championship with its third string quarterback, and there's tons of players everywhere not playing in this game. Who are hurt or transfer portal or what have you.
Yeah.
So I don't like that. I thought Travis Jones did a cool tweet though, that he said he wished his leg broke earlier this season so they could see how good everybody could see how good they were without him. So.
Yep.
All right, hey, we thought this was a really good Arizona basketball team. I don't know that we thought that they would get to number one by early December, though.
No,
but here we are, number one team in the country, and guess what? They look like a number one team. They really do. First time in 10 years since the Aaron Gordon, Rondé Hollis Jefferson, T.J. McConnell team that went 20-0. At Callan and Brandon Ashley broke his foot, a basket away from the Final Four that year. With an injured Brandon Ashley. That was the last time they were number one. They weren't number one during the DeAndre Ayton year. That's people's guess. People have a short memory. They lost all three games in their holiday tournament that year with DeAndre Ayton, Alonzo Trier, and Raleigh Elkins.
But weren't they in the top? I want to say they were like second or third, maybe third.
Good point. It was the biggest drop ever out of the top 25.
To go from like number two or three out of the poll in 1 week.
That's right, with 3 losses. Yeah,
but they weren't number one. They weren't number one.
Saying, well, how you do in the first game in a tournament like that is usually how you're going to do in the other tournaments because you don't really have time to fix anything. I remember him saying that. But so that team was never number one. And certainly we know what happened against Buffalo in the tournament. So.
Yes.
But this team is looks like a mentally tough, physically tough. Looks like a deep number one team.
Yeah, they certainly do, and I think mentally tough is the key. And they just seem to have all the right parts that fit together. But you need all those pieces and roles to develop. And I think that the surprise to me, and maybe I've said it here before, but just how quickly they all found their roles and have come together as a team. I think going to the Middle East on that summer tour really helped them. They've come out of the gate strong, third in scoring offense in the country at 93.4 points per game. They're 27th in scoring defense, which is actually for this time of the year pretty good, Jason, because those early games, a lot of times you're just running and gunning and you're not really playing. You want to play defense, but it's not as imperative. So I think they maybe even improve a little bit on that. Kylan Boswell still third in the country, second in the country in 3-point field goal percentage at over 54% from 3-point. He continues to be a catalyst. Even when we had a tough first half against Colgate, he came right back in the second half. Here's the thing that's going to separate them, though, is that they're not going to go undefeated. This is something that rarely, if ever, happens in college basketball.
No,
but they've got this will tell us a lot over the next 4 games. So they play Wisconsin, who's now ranked 23rd because they've really turned it around. They've got number 4 Purdue. They have Alabama, who just dropped out of the poll, but they are still Alabama. I think they're still a tough team you have to be reckoned with. And then Florida Atlantic, surprisingly, is up to number 11. So in essence, the next 4 games are against, pretty, top 25 or just out of the top 25 teams. 3 of those games, of course, Indianapolis, Phoenix, and Las Vegas. The last 3 of those games. The last home game for the next couple of weeks is coming up on Saturday against Wisconsin. So we'll find out a lot more in the next few weeks.
I'm trying to think, Pat, have they played Wisconsin since the Frank Kaminsky games?
I'm hard pressed to remember that they did.
I don't think so. I remember talking about it, but I think I was talking about it because they came up on the schedule.
Because we knew that they were going to be doing this.
I don't think I was talking about it because they were playing Wisconsin.
Right.
I don't think they've played Wisconsin. And, I know it's a little bit of a sore subject here. But they lost to Wisconsin back-to-back years in the Elite Eight. The first game was by a last-minute, a one-possession game. That was in 14, and then 15 was a bad blowout in Los Angeles when Stanley Johnson got poked in the eye. And Sean Miller put Rondé Hollis-Jefferson on either Sam Decker or Kaminsky. And Rondé could contain one of those 2 players. He couldn't contain both. And whoever Sean Miller put Rondé on, the other guy went
off.
Yeah. And Kaminsky with all those weaving and everything. And they couldn't stop him. And I remember, as good as Brandon Ashley was at times, he could not guard Frank Kaminsky.
Yeah.
And so that was, but I believe that, and he was the National Player of the Year that year, if I'm not mistaken. And so
that's true.
But that was the last time they played Wisconsin. So,
and I think what you're gonna see a Wisconsin team that really has got a lot of confidence too, and they're on a roll. And I think Arizona, as they did against Duke and Michigan State, you got to get out to leads and then you just got to withstand. They're going to come back. They make runs. And if they do that, they might take the will out of Wisconsin, and the home crowd will certainly help.
Yeah, for sure. And, I don't know how much you learn against these other games.
The Colgates of the world.
Yeah, I think it's just, what you take, what you feel you didn't do right against the Power 5 teams, and maybe you clean it up against those teams. But, it's been an interesting mix. A tough game and then an easier game and then a tough game and an easier game, just in case they need to clean anything up. But they really don't have that much to do. So
the next 4 won't be as easy as that. On and off.
Yeah,
it's going to be 4 in a row. Now there's plenty of days between. There's a week between the Wisconsin game and the Purdue game. Then there's 4 days to Alabama, and then there's 3 days to Florida Atlantic. And then they get a little break before they start Pac-12 play.
And even if they were to win all those games, which is not probable but possible, they'll still get tripped up in the Pac-12. Somewhere. Everybody has an off night at a tough place to play. Every team is going to be gunning for Arizona this year. I mean, they're gunning for Arizona every year when they go on the road in the Pac-12. When you got that number 1 label, you get everybody's best, which is what made that Kentucky team about a decade ago so good. The one that went through the regular season, if I'm not mistaken, unbeaten. The Harrison twins maybe were on the team.
Yeah, that sounds right.
They got everybody's best game is the point I'm trying to make.
Yep.
And Arizona's going to get everybody's best game.
Sure.
So that's the challenge. You won't be able to say going into this tournament, this year's NCAA tournament, they weren't tested. They played different types of teams, which was the problem 2 years ago when they lost to Houston. They're going to play different types of teams, tough environments, neutral environments. How about this? A neutral environment that's not going to be a neutral environment when they play Purdue at Indianapolis, right?
That's right.
Obviously at Duke, that was a good crowd at Palm Springs, 9,000 people. We didn't know how many people were going to go when they played Michigan State. There was 9,000 people there. So this is a tested team, and that's the plan.
And you mentioned Houston, and I keep looking at them, and that just seems to be the team that they're going to probably run into again in the NCAA tournament at some point. Maybe it won't be until very late, and you hope they both make a deep playoff run. But you're still going to have to get by a team like Houston, and that's a tough team. And Arizona will be much more prepared this time around than they were 2 years ago in Tommy Lloyd's first season.
Yeah, and they'll be playing Houston a couple times next year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they sure will. I think that's what is going to also, battle test this team. That's why Kansas is a national champion contender every year. They may win that league most years. In fact, they win it every year. It seems like the Big 12, but they get tested a lot. And now when you add Houston into that mix too, you've got Houston and Baylor, and don't forget Iowa State, and you go.
Dr. Robbins talked about the rivalry upcoming with Kansas, but I think it's going to be just as tough with Houston.
I do too, because I think Houston identifies a lot more with us than they do with Kansas in the sense of being in the Southwest, and and
they're a physical team year in and year out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they are. They're usually very physical.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been, this is what we want. We want to talk about a #1 Arizona basketball team. We want to talk about a football team, the highest rated bowl game. That's not a New Year's Six game. This is what we got. And could be happier this time of year to be talking Arizona basketball and Arizona football in this way. Improbable, but improbable in a good way. And so we'll take it and we'll cover it, and we'll have a lot of fun, over the next month with both, and then for the next 3 months with basketball.
Yeah, should be fun. I don't think any of us could have imagined that we would be talking about such meaningful football and basketball.